Welcome to the Green Podcast. My name is Dylan Welch. I'm the CEO of green.org and Dylan Welch Media. Our goal with this podcast is to bring you the biggest names and leaders in renewable energy, clean technology, and sustainability so that you can stay up to date with the latest trends and everything that is happening in this world. Not only that, you'll get some action items for your life so that you can apply some amazing things and make your world a better place as well. Let's get the show started. Real quick, before we kick off this episode, I want to announce that we have our fall 2022 Green Summit in San Diego, September 17th. Tickets are now available, so get yours today. It's one day of different speakers in renewable energy, clean technology, sustainability, all leaders sharing their vision in TED Talk style presentations for what the world will look like with a more sustainable future. There's only 300 available seats for the event, and I know they're going quickly. There's already less than 300 by the recording of this. So go grab your ticket, green-summit.org, and let's kick off the episode. Thank you very much.
Love the world we live in with EarthX TV. The only 24/7 channel.
It's about protecting our future.
Dedicated to our planet.
The number one goal is to protect plants and animals that live there.
Take action. Get inspired. Make an impact.
Join me in the fight for our planet.
That's what conservation takes.
Join the revolution on EarthX TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Green Podcast. We have another special episode today. We have our two guests joining us rather than our standard one episode podcast. And this is because we have some exciting things coming up in the very near future. We have the Green Summit coming up, and one of our guests today is our featured keynote speaker at the Green Summit. We have Don Owens, the chairman of HNO International, joining us, along with our second guest. And I may butcher this. He's going to tune in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to do my best. Piotr Przybylo, the CEO and founder of Geomodes. So Don and Piotr, I want to thank both of you guys. Don, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me today, Don. And I'm looking forward to talking to Piotr. Piotr, we have some very interesting questions, and those are very, very nice. And I think we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yes, sir. And Piotr, thanks so much for being here as well. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. But yeah, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to join us.
No, you absolutely didn't butcher my name. Thanks so much for trying really hard to pronounce my name and the surname, which is not easy. Really glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation with Don.
Great. So we're going to dive into a little bit more about sustainable business, global carbon emissions. But first, we're going to go a little bit into the backgrounds of each of our guests. So Don, we'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about your background. Let our audience know kind of what you're working on and how you got started in that space.
Okay. Well, I have an engineering type background, and I have developed a product that using hydrogen to reduce emissions from vehicles, et cetera. And one of the things that I discovered while developing this is the reason that I'm living now is to inform everybody that black carbon is the enemy of the planet. One of the things that that a lot of people don't know is what black carbon does and how it coats the glaciers and causes them to melt. And it is not one of the, but the major cause of climate change. Not one of but the major. There may be some other minors, but as long as our glaciers are melting, we're going to have some serious problems. But we do have a solution to minimize it. But we do have to first recognize who the enemy is, and it is black carbon, and it's also recognize that we will be using fossil fuel for a long time. And the fact that we will be using it for a long time, even though we would like to move away from it, the reality is that we're going to be using it for a long time. And we have to do something to make it better. And that's why that's all about trying to find better ways to burn the fuel that we are currently using as we move toward more renewable type energy.
Exactly. But yeah, that's
my slogan.
Continue. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
My slogan. Let me just say that's one slogan, because I don't want anybody to forget this. And that is black carbon is the enemy of the planet. That has to be drilled into the hands and the heads and the minds of every human being on this planet. Because once we do understand it, we as humans can do anything. But unless we know where to shoot and where to target our energies, we don't know what to do about that. But we can do something about black carbon, but it is indeed the enemy of the planet.
Exactly. And Don, I appreciate your passion for educating people, and it's important to have sort of that number one enemy that we're looking to eradicate. And then in addition to not only identifying that, also goals to accomplish that, and realistic, achievable goals to get there too. So Pio, let's bring it over to you and just tell us a little bit about your working on, your background, and Geomodes.
So I'm by background, I'm actually a geologist. I studied paleoclimate. So I know a little bit of climate change, and I'm sort of, really active in that area as well. But as a CEO and founder of Geomodes, I'm really passionate about education, and our mission is basically educate people about sustainability, among others, but also we provide sort of a new way, we call it a human-centered learning process to oil and gas and energy professionals. We believe that it's extremely important, since we are talking here about sustainability, climate change, and energy transformation. We believe, and we've noticed that that's our experience, that we really need to change the culture from within the energy industry, and this is what Geomodes is doing. We are providing the courses and training at the moment to our clients across the world. We have over 500 different courses, and I really like what Don said. I actually totally agree with it. And the one thing which is quite crucial, I totally agree with you, Don. The fossil fuels are not going anywhere. We just need to tackle it how the most effectively and efficiently control the energy transformation, and sort of, produce the least sort of, the carbon footprint possible. But the fossil fuel is not going anywhere. There's a lot of propaganda, what green is, what is not. We believe that we need to educate people what really green is and how it can be used properly. And I really like your slogan, but our slogan is sustainability needs to be sustainable.
I love it.
Good slogans all around. Well, guys, Pio, you're bringing up a very important point, and basically our first kind of talking point and question for today. All of us are in, the business and have a passion for using media and mass communications to educate people. And with, the technology we have today, where information can be spread so quickly, it's very easy to also spread misinformation. So one thing I want to kind of chat with both of you guys is just diving into a little bit more of the overall sort of misunderstanding of the concept of global carbon emission and what that means. You guys are the scientists, you guys are the experts, you're the CEOs. So what misinformation are you seeing being spread, and what can people do to either find that good quality information or even go beyond that and start making an impact? So Don, what are some things that you've noticed in your career?
That's very interesting. Very good question too, because we all on this planet have heard of CO2, and CO2 being the big bugaboo. And granted, you can go through history and find higher levels of CO2 as you go back millions and millions of years, and you do see a correlation between the warming of the planet with less and more. But CO2, black carbon is actually 1,500 times worse than CO2, and nobody's talking about black carbon. And so some of the things that we are being told or not told, but trying to convince us to do is kind of impossible to do. Human beings are on this planet, and we grow every year. I mean, the population grows. I mean, granted, there's a population that dies off, but we are a growing species. So we're not going to be using less. I mean, the whole idea is telling somebody they need to cut their emissions. Yes, they do need to cut their emissions, but they can't do it just due to, if nothing else, the fact that we are growing. I mean, I go down the street here in California, I see construction because I see, people have babies, people are building new hospitals, they're building new this, new that. So all these things will always continue. Okay. And granted, what we do need to do is try to make the best of it. But for people to even think that you can get somebody to cut all their emissions, it's ridiculous, because we still kind of like being human. I like the fact that I'm in a house right now and it's hot outside and my air conditioner is running. Now, granted, I am contributing to black carbon, but I'm also a comfortable human being right now, on the internet, talking to people all over the world. And this is what we kind of like to do, But so the fact that we have to figure out a way figure out a way to communicate the fact that we still have to live, but we have to try to live better and try not to blame everybody. You can't blame the oil industry. You can't blame anybody, because we are all human beings. We all contribute to this, and we all contribute to the fact that we have to use energy. So I think once we can start recognizing the fact that you can't blame anyone for us being humans, we can start identifying what might be possible to enable us to live here a little bit better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And Pio, I know, one thing that you do at Geomodes is you really are all about educating people and actually helping them learn how they can be more sustainable, but also, living and working in that space too. So in terms of, running Geomodes from a CEO standpoint, what are some overall just educational misunderstandings that you've seen, and how at Geomodes are you guys trying to work on fixing that?
It's quite interesting. Thank you for that question. It's interesting to see how people react to the truth that basically everything what they wear on themselves, all their laptops or the equipment, all the AGD equipment, their car, their plane they took, the last month, to go into that, the nice resort, is all by a product of fossil fuel. And those are the people who basically shouted the loudest about banning, the oil and gas company, kicking them out of the countries, etc. They are basically, we educate them on a very, very basic level, and people do not realize how that sometimes is very hypocritical, how they react to certain things. We do understand that oil and gas is a major contributor to sort of the carbon footprint, but so is textile industry, so it's any other industry. I'm gonna tell you something more. I always challenge everything what's possible, and I've actually do like to do calculations myself. I never sort of take anything with face value. Can you imagine then that recycling industry is a major contributor to carbon footprint in this planet? This is unbelievable. People do not believe me until I show them calculations. Something that should be very green, right? We all want to recycle, that the small children are being taught at school that they need to recycle, you have 3 different color bins, and people do that because that's good for a planet. Well, not necessarily from the carbon footprint perspective. So we run a lot of sort of, this type of courses where we sort of, raising the awareness of what really needs to be done. There's a lot of things that could be done, but not necessarily, and this is my favorite topic, which is the electric cars, which are they're not green. They're equally affecting, the carbon emission as a diesel that the regular people drive, unfortunately. So it's very important. I don't want to be understood that I'm pro oil and gas, because I'm not. My background, I work my entire sort of professional life in oil and gas industry with oil and gas professionals, and we are providing something that is really needed. But I totally understand we need to do something about it. The time is now, but more clear we're gonna be about what needs to be done, and we are not gonna sort of spread this strange misinformation and propaganda and actually present people with facts and actual data, then then we will succeed. Hopefully, there's still a long way, but that's the only way to succeed. Present people with the real data and not with the sort of almost a religious sort of the approach and belief because someone said so. So that's my view on that sort of that question.
Yeah, I don't think. Oh, Don, go ahead, please.
No, I just want to say it's really, really interesting what you're saying, because I've coined a phrase called the fossil fuel energy infrastructure. And the reality is that we live in this infrastructure, and we are like fish in an ocean in this infrastructure. We would be like fish out of water if it wasn't for it. All of the green things that we developed, the windmills, the electric cars, the batteries, none of it would even exist without the fossil fuel energy infrastructure. Not one single solitary thing. Not one single solitary thing. And most people don't realize how vast this infrastructure is. It's extremely vast, but it's not vast because it wants to be an evil vastness. It's just vast because we do a lot of things. We as human beings do a lot of stuff within this fossil fuel energy infrastructure. And it's that infrastructure that we cannot avoid. It's gonna be with us forever. But we can make it better. And that's what we have to educate people to. We can make it better. We have to make it better if we want to have any shot of climate change. But I'm sorry, Dylan.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And Pio, one thing I know Geomodes is working on, you guys offer a lot of different courses and sort of help with people looking to make career changes. What trends are you kind of noticing in your company? Are you seeing a lot more people transition over to more of the sustainable industries? Because I know you offer some sustainable educational courses and help with that.
We actually see trend both ways. Believe it or not, a lot of oil and gas people, they do believe sort of, they spend a lot of time educating themselves. They have diplomas, degrees, etc., and they are really worried about the future. Obviously, they are the breadwinners for the families. They want to have something which is sort of, the long-term, the security in terms of sort of the job and how they live. And that's not being provided currently in oil and gas because of the environment that sort of we are living in at the moment. The oil and gas is really threatened at the moment. I'm not even talking about sort of the investment levels, etc. Right? Having said that, the energy demand is increasing, but we are not investing more and more in fossil fuel. So that's why, for example, we have the situation like currently in Europe, from where I'm talking to you, there's a serious major sort of energy crisis, and it's related to partially to war, but mostly, to the very high, the energy prices, which are related to fear on markets. It's not related to the demand as such, but also to the fear that people feel, worried about the future. So that would be the sort of the major trend, and that's why those professionals feel that in renewables, sort of, the part of the energy industry, they're gonna be more secure. So that's the trend, sort of, that direction. However, the oil and gas is sort of changing quite a lot, and being a so-called a geologist is not enough in oil and gas. You need to be a geologist and, for example, a scrum master or agile coach or big data sort of specialist, or so all this digitalization and energy transformation requires a totally different skill set. So first of all, people need to they need to be sort of taken from outside of the industry and sort of, trained to be, the valuable sort of, asset within the industry. All the current sort of oil and gas professionals needs to retrain and reskill. And we find that extremely difficult at the moment. People believe that, with one diploma is already enough. They don't want to become someone else. But unfortunately, with the current situation and energy transition, just one set of skill set is not enough anymore. So those are sort of the major trends. What I'm saying, a lot of people over the last 5-6 years left oil and gas industry forever. And what I'm always saying, and that's a kind of surprise, we will not stop producing oil because we will not need it anymore. We will stop producing oil because they're not going to be specialists that will be able to drill it. And
Wow.
that's quite scary future that
Wow.
we are sort of
You're not kidding.
preparing for ourselves. Yeah.
Don,
Yeah.
what trends have you
That's
seen?
the biggest threat to oil and gas industry right now. It's not rise of the renewables. It's not the energy transformation. It's not the carbon footprint. It's the lack of professionals and skill set within the industry.
Wow. That's pretty serious, and that is pretty scary. It's especially if you know it's got to be here, which we do know. It has to be.
Imagine having that sort of, the mass media message constantly being told across oil and gas is bad. Oil, we don't need oil. We can replace it with windmills, whatever you name it, right? The solar panels, etc. So it's not attractive anymore for young professionals, right? People trying to avoid something which has sort of that bad reputation, and that's what we basically created.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, I mean, it sounds like this is happening, but Don, in your career, have you seen a big transition of just generally people working or more jobs being created in the renewable energy clean tech space?
Well, obviously, in fact, because it is a nice, sexy word, renewables and green and all, which is fine. You do have a lot of people transitioning there because it is a good place to transition to. I mean, indeed, the more we realize that we like our planet, the more, and we have to have our planet, it's good that people will want to do things that will help us be more sustainable. But just like Piotr said, this is not going to happen overnight. And the things that we need to have done, I mean, all of the things that we want to do, even in the sustainability world, renewable world, is all based on the infrastructure that we live in, which is fossil fuel. And I never really thought about the fact that even though I can mentally see why this evil has been pointed to in terms of the oil and gas. I mean, I can, I hear it all the time, but I never thought about the fact that it is discouraging people from being there and doing what we need done. Like I said, if the fear now is the same fear as you have, Piotr, we need it. We need the fossil fuel energy infrastructure. And what happens indeed if we stop drilling personally? I mean, just stop drilling forever and nobody knows how to drill, and we still need the infrastructure just to build a new windmill, right? So all these things, or just to maintain our data centers. Now, granted, we always will want to be able to move and transition to a point where we can use the sun, we can use wind, we can use all these different things to create energy and to create the lifestyle that we're accustomed to living in. But the reality is we still have to use fossil fuel in order even to do that. And this, I think in my next presentation, I say something about how vast the energy infrastructure, the fossil fuel energy infrastructure is, and I relate it to the vastness of space. It is truly vast. But most people don't realize just how big and how it affects so many things, the common things that we do. Just like you said, the shirt that I have on right now, the glasses that I wear, the glass that is everything. And but see, most people don't look at that. They look at transportation, they look at cars. They think cars and transportation is all that there is. And it's not. It's nowhere near all that there is. So yes, we do have to be very concerned. I'm happy to hear that if you're doing this education, because people need to know. I will be one of the first people again that will try to educate too, because we live in this infrastructure, and infrastructure is not going away. We just have to make this infrastructure better. That's what we have to do. We have to make it better so that it won't be harming as much as it is while we try to transition. But our transition is going to be a long time. It's not going to be an overnight thing.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely,
that's a
absolutely.
good point. I'll go, Piotr, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that I absolutely agree with you, Don. Just one thing, maybe sort of the message from across the pond, as I'm speaking from Europe. So not that long time ago, European Union actually chosen a natural gas as a sort of the energy source which is going to help with the energy transition, right? But it's still gas, it's still fossil fuel. It obviously has a much smaller sort of carbon footprint than oil, than coal. And that's why it was chosen, but it's still a fossil fuel, and we still need to drill those wells to extract that gas. So it's extremely important to realize that's fossil fuel.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you, Piotr. So a lot of people, obviously, they go to college to further their education, and it's an investment in essentially themselves for, a better career. And a lot of people want that, long-term sort of idea that job will be there. So when someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm looking for that job security, what do you tell them? Because, you're saying there's a huge demand for people to work in the gas and oil industry, but is that going to be phased out? Or do you recommend, thinking ahead that they start educating themselves to work in the renewable energy? Or do you have some sort of, dual course program where they can kind of learn both at the same time? Because it sounds like you're mentioning that's also important as well, when you can kind of take those two separate skill sets and apply it. So generally speaking, when someone does come to Geomodes and they say, hey, I want a career, I want to work in this industry. Obviously energy isn't going away for a while. What is sort of that process that you walk them through to help them find that career path?
As long as we don't find some sort of, the silver bullet of fusion from, another planet, I'm going to be controversial in saying that if you are a specialist within a certain field, and those fields are digitally related, data related, artificial intelligence, or even things like metaverse, blockchain, absolutely. Just find out a little bit more about oil and gas, and you will not have a problem with your occupation. You're going to get a job for life. And I know that sounds a little bit sort of, controversial, but that's the truth. There's a demand. There's a huge need for specialists, not necessarily traditional oil and gas professions like geologist, drilling engineer, etc. But if you're a geologist with a huge data management sort of, the skill set, with yourself that you're bringing, as an asset to the industry, then you're not going to have a problem. People are going to compete for you, and you will just basically be able to choose between, you're the best employer.
Interesting. So, because I know you guys also do have a lot of sustainable education classes. So you're not saying like, hey, everyone should go into this sector. You guys obviously see that there's value in providing those courses. That's just interesting to hear that. So when you guys go to create a course for your students, how do you decide, what course to launch? And do you look at data in terms of industries that are growing, or just requests from people or universities or companies that are hiring? How does that tend to work?
So we work on different levels. The lowest sort of level, not in terms of importance, but sort of, in terms of sort of, the advancement, is the universities and sort of, polytechnics, etc. So we provide that link for the newly graduated or sort of, the young professionals with the industry. Obviously they have a very little knowledge about what the industry sort of needs and requirements in terms of sort of their skills that are. So we already engage with them at that level. So they come already prepared, and they become an asset from the day one of the industry. That was not always the case. And imagine a situation when there's a lot of countries where have, for example, very traditional oil and gas professions, being taught, and then being graduated. However, that was never verified with the actual industry demand. So that might not be a problem in such a big country like US, for example, but imagine a country, Angola, 70% of the GDP of the country comes from oil and gas industry. By the way, try to tell them, to go and just shut it down, right? Obviously, what's going to happen. But what I'm trying to say is this: there's a limited number of geologists that the industry needs. And there needs to be a message from the industry back to the university, how many graduates per year they can accommodate, they can sort of, absorb. That was never the case. And actually, we helped them to come up with that sort of strategy. And now sort of the number of drilling engineers, data management, or even, the drillers, the work offshore, on the oil rig, that number is being verified by actually the direct link and connection with the industry. So that's already helping people to find the occupation and basically not being professional who cannot find a job. Those people are not going to leave the country to look for a job somewhere else. They need to find that sort of, job within the country. So that's the thing that we actually do on the university level. Then obviously, we target individuals. We notice that a lot of companies do not care about the development of their professionals. So obviously we try to help them. So people actually they want to develop themselves and they come to us. But we also work with sort of corporate clients. So basically those are those great organizations that fully understand that training and education is the most important sort of, the asset, that the people are the asset, not their sort of, the infrastructure. So they sort of, they approach us and, they ask for a particular sort of training, which we always designed for them. Just one thing, which I think is quite important to mention: we never teach the same thing twice the same way. So we always adjust the training to our clients. We have a very sort of, extended consulting stage before we actually, run the course. This is not sort of, the one serve all. And we adjust it. That's sort of our methodology, and it works pretty well. And we get a sort of good feedback about that. And also we work sometimes on the sort of governmental level, helping, the creating sort of policies, procedures, especially in the countries like Angola, because sometimes they basically need help. And because we are independent, they trust sometimes us more than sort of, the established corporations from elsewhere.
Yeah, that's smart to kind of reverse engineer, learning what industries need how many jobs, and then providing, the education for those roles that are open versus just saying, hey, this is what everyone should go out and study. Don, just from your background in working in this space, what sort of advice would you give to, either people who want to get into the space or people who are maybe interested in, getting a career in renewable energy, clean technology? What paths would you kind of recommend them to go down and to follow?
Well, that's a good question. In fact, because I am probably the first proponent of the fact that black carbon is the enemy of the planet, that is always going to be my message. And what I've actually formed a couple of organizations. One is the Coalition Against Black Carbon, and another one is Black Carbon Coalition. The Black Carbon Coalition is really designed as a funding mechanism for engineering engineering technologies that we can use to improve our current energy consumption. So in other words, I want to improve the fact that these ships that are circulating the globe are creating less black carbon, but it has to be done by technology. I want to improve the fact that these power plants burning natural gas or whatever are doing what they do, but they can be improved. And I want to develop technology that can help them improve what they're doing. And so I think if the message can be appropriately received by human beings that know that we have a problem, some of those people can go into those types of technologies, because this is going to be the technologies that will save our planet, that will keep us sustainable for sustainable sake, while we are being sustainable, right? But while we're being reasonably sustainable. But those things, those technologies have to be developed. And so, like I said, my message will always be black carbon is the enemy of the planet. To the degree that nobody knows that they can put that in their mind to start thinking about and how we can improve the things that we do with fossil fuels, because we have to improve it. And I believe we can improve it so well that it can be a non-issue, because human beings can do anything. Anytime you think about us putting a doggone telescope 1 million miles circling the earth, looking into the stars, we can do anything. It's no limit to what we can do, but we have to know that we have to do it. Particularly
Don, if I may, so I totally agree that technology is sort of the crucial part of sort of that energy transition, sort of the energy mix globally, worldwide. And what we come across quite often is a simple sort of human resistance to technology, because the artificial intelligence is going to replace all the jobs and people are going to be jobless, and that's why there's the sort of within the industry the resistance to sort of absorb sort of that idea that technology actually is going to help that, which I totally agree. How do you deal with that? How sort of you convince people that they should rather be sort of the really keen of sort of employing those sort of new technologies rather than being sort of afraid of them?
Well, it's interesting because, like you said, when people think about their own jobs, that's what they think about. But and the fact that they won't have it, but they will have it. They don't know that they will have it. Or if we transition, there's still something for us always to do. But basically, I think the main, if we can really truly get people to understand that we have one planet, and this one planet is vital to all of us, to our kids, to us, to our children's children, to everybody, that they won't resist technology as much if they stop thinking so much about themselves and start thinking about everybody else, all right, and about all of us. I shouldn't so much think about themselves, because everybody still instinctively have to think about yourself, but you can still think about others, and you can still think about the fact that we have to do something positive for not only this generation, but the next generations and the next generations, so that this planet, this very unique place that we live on, can be a place that we can live on in the future. Because if we don't, it's not going to be anything. It's not going to be anything for anybody. Yeah. But now at the same time, the earth is going to be here. The earth doesn't care. The earth itself, we can mess it all up. It will clean itself off in another 1 million years. Well, we just won't happen to be on it at the time, right? Or we won't be able to live on it, if we keep doing the things that we're doing. But so, we can either bump up against Mother Nature or help Mother Nature. And I think the best thing for us to all mentally realize is that we want to help Mother Nature. We don't want to hurt Mother Nature. Now, we can try to hurt Mother Nature, but Mother Nature is going to be Mother Nature, right? It's going to, if it turns into Mars, if the Earth turns into Mars, it'll just be Mars. It just won't have any caterpillars and mushrooms anymore. But we have to make sure that it stays Earth, right? And that will be a way, I believe, if people can think about not only themselves, but everybody and the future generations, technology won't be such a bad thing to them.
Yeah, what's really interesting is green.org and the Green Podcast was started about 4 years ago, and things were a little bit different back then. And I'm just kind of getting flashbacks of why it was all started. And it was because, oil and gas and renewable energy and clean technology, it was like these two separate things, like separate teams, separate sides of the political spectrum. You're either on one or the other. And then we started this podcast and green.org as a way to cut through all of that and say, hey, we want to talk to, the smartest people that are experts in the space, cut through, the media headlines that we all read and then we all get upset with, And it's kind of interesting because Pio, you're kind of bringing up some good points, and Don, same with you, where there's not just one or the other. We all kind of have to come together, and there's a lot of opportunities for, let's say, Pete, you were mentioning the people who maybe have worked in oil and gas for 30 years. They might be afraid that, these new technologies are going to come and, ruin their jobs. Or on the flip side with, Don, like, yes, it is very important for us to be extremely mindful of, what we're doing and the choices we make and how that affects the planet. But at the same time, we all need job security. We all need to pay our bills. So there's sort of this middle ground where it's, hey, you can find a job in oil and gas and it doesn't make you an enemy. But you can also sort of, be mindful of, what you're doing in that industry and still be, providing value to the planet. And on the flip side, just because you want to work in renewable energy and clean technology, maybe there's not all of these, unlimited jobs and unlimited technologies that are, employing everyone right now. If you're looking for that security, there still is that demand, and there always will be that need for oil and gas. So it's kind of that sweet spot. And Piotr, that's what I really think is interesting about Geomodes, is you kind of offer both sides of that spectrum, and even that opportunity to sort of make that transition and that leap from one to the other. So it is cool kind of hearing both of these sides and that reminder of, why we started this in the first place. And it kind of brings me back to those times. Don, let's kind of wrap it up. What are some final sort of thoughts, takeaways that you would like to leave our audience with as we sort of wrap up this episode?
All right. Well, it's such a pleasure to meet you, Piotr. I'm so happy about what you're doing, because it's just amazing, really, because I've always kind of known we've needed fossil fuel, but I didn't really know that anybody else knew that we needed the way that you know it. But we do. I believe, and the message I want to always leave, and this is my message of all time, is that black carbon is the enemy of the planet. We have to identify it as an enemy. We have to know that it's an enemy. We have to teach people that it's an enemy. And because it is going to be the thing that's going to enable, or it's going to create all kinds of climate issues, just like in Europe right now. The freaking Rhine River is drying up. That's just unheard of. And as we start shifting with some of these, hold on one second. Somebody's at the door. And as we start shifting with as these climate issues changing, where the South Pole turns into the Sahara Desert, we can't have that. Now if it happens, then there's just going to be a huge population shift and everything else that we are not looking forward to. But at the same time, if we recognize that black carbon is the enemy of the planet, we can do something about climate change. We don't have to sit here and just look and wait for it to happen. We can take aggressive actions to start making changes toward how we use our existing infrastructure and how we use our existing, not only clean energy, but fossil fuel and everything else. We can improve it all. And the human beings, and I always like to say this, we can do anything that we decide to do. Anything. There's no limits on what our capabilities are. But we just have to recognize that we have to identify the enemy and point at the enemy and do something about the enemy.
Thanks, Don. And Pio, how about you? Any final thoughts as we kind of wrap this up? Any takeaways that you'd like to share with our audience?
It was definitely a pleasure speaking to you and to Don. I think that I'm always surprised why approach to sort of that sort of complex, the problem that we've been discussing here, why it needs to be so radical, why there is always this or that. I really don't understand when, I think if we could have created sort of some sort of a peace here, between, what needs to be done and understanding, then I do believe that this can also be achieved, elsewhere. And, the big industries, including governments and all the sort of, the climate change sort of, the non sort of governmental bodies. So I don't believe that actually we have a choice, this or that. It needs to come together. So we can only sort of change that with the oil and gas industry included, and not sort of, the alienating it and putting it to the side because we know it better. That's never going to happen. So sort of, the last sort of words for me, not this and that, but sort of coming together. That's the only way to go forward.
I love it, guys. Thank you so much. It is great, and that's why we have these conversations, is to just sort of remind us that really at the end of the day, this is all about us coming together, working together, being able to provide for our families, provide for our friends, try to make the world a better place in any way we can. First off, I want to thank Don and Piotr for being here. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to this episode. If you're interested in a little bit more about some clean technologies that bring clean, affordable energy to the people, I would be sure to check out Don's company, hnointernational.com. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more, furthering your career, Geomodes offers some really cool, interesting classes, both on kind of both sides we're talking about, a little bit of oil and gas, a little bit of clean technology, renewable energy, and even some ways to kind of make that transition as well. So, Don, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. Piotr, same with you. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day today to chat.
Yeah, great, Dylan.
Thank you very much.
Moderation. This has been very good. This has been very educational for me.
Yeah, same. And to everyone listening, watching, supporting green.org, the Green Summit, be sure to get your tickets today, whether you want to tune in virtually, attend in person. We have Don there as our featured keynote speaker, so we can learn a little bit more, meet Don in person. And other than that, we appreciate your support of the show. We appreciate you tuning in, listening, and working on yourself to further your career, being a little bit more environmentally friendly, a little bit more sustainable, and just educating yourself on all the different things that are out there. Our goal is to bring you leaders like Don, like Piotr, to come together, cross those bridges, and educate everyone on the opportunities that are out there. So with that, we want to thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Green Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Piotr.
Thank you very
nice
much.
meeting you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode. My name is Dylan Welch. Appreciate it. As always, stay up to date with the latest information on green.org and dylanwelch.com. Dylan Welch Media is a full-service media and communications agency dedicated to promoting, marketing, and helping businesses in clean tech, renewable energy, and sustainability grow, get more clients, get more customers, get in front of their ideal clientele. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. If you're interested in joining the Green Summit, go to www.green-summit.org. Reserve your ticket today. There's very few spots left, so make sure you get on that ASAP. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.